Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ken and I am a counsellor helping men and women to reconnect back with themselves. For today's episode, I want to talk about the gay community in relation to sex positivity. So what I mean by that is looking at how being able to create non-traditional relationships, including polyamory, open relationships, has really allowed us to explore things that work for a lot of people and also illustrate examples where it actually might be doing a disservice to many other people. For example, where sex positivity can actually become a form of avoidancy in dealing with insecurities, issues and true feelings about relationships, and also being used as a way to repress feelings that need to be unearthed. And if this video is of any help to you, please like and subscribe as it really helps me out. And if you're looking to work with me, feel free to just click on the application form in the description below. So diving straight in, let's talk about sex positivity. As a gay white man, my take on sex positivity is really this idea that we are now able to do a lot more than just monogamy. We're able to have open relationships, polyamory, meaning that we're able to, at least as I understand it, be with multiple different people of different genders, ethnic backgrounds, and it's, it just feels right for us too. This isn't something that's exclusively right for everyone, but it is one of those things where it does allow for a lot more freedom than being stuck in a very traditional monogamous experience, which I think has been the case for a lot of people who've really felt like they needed to explore outside of monogamy. And I think for people who've lived under a very rigid experience where they weren't able to feel like they could even divorce and actually get their own needs met, sexual liberation has actually allowed people to fill their own cup up in many ways in figuring out who they are and what they really want out of a relationship. Now, I personally think the advantage of sex positivity, whether it be, enjoying threesomes, open relationships or polyamory, is it's actually a really good opportunity to explore what you want for yourself. And the reason this is important is because if you are set on being in a relationship, it has to be something that aligns with you. Many people do not really feel like they're meant to be in a one-on-one relationship, meaning just with two people. It's just not for them. And that's why it's so important to have an opportunity to explore what feels right to you. In many cases, it might actually be through experimentation that you quickly realize what kind of experience you want to cultivate. And also, this is important because it really drastically reduces the number of people that you would want to be with potentially. Because if you are someone who really likes the idea of open relationships and it works for other people who are like that, you don't be with people who can't. And also, for a bit of personal context, I did an open relationship many moons ago, and I've got to be honest, it really wasn't for me. And it was something that I chose to create, not out of a place of insecurity. And we will get to that in a minute, because that's something I want to explore in depth. But it was really used as an opportunity when I was feeling like I just wasn't ready to be in a relationship. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to explore what it was like to date other men. And I also was at an age where I was like, I'm just curious. I want to just feel what it's like to be with other people because it helps me understand, concepts of self-worth, self-esteem, and also what feels right to me too. And that phase of doing it and just sort of exploring the freedoms of it also came with a lot of stuff that I wasn't even prepared for, which is the fact that I did actually feel a bit of shame and also feeling of just like, this is too draining for me. And having had similar sort of experiences since, I gotta be honest, being with more than one person just isn't for me, but it's gonna be different for everyone. And for a bit of added context, because this is important to anyone who's inspired to try, I made it very clear to my partner, like on day one, that was what I was looking for, and they were open to that too. And as I said, it got to a point where having been with, I was actually with one other guy that I introduced into the experience, and it just didn't feel right. It felt really wrong to me. And that was when I was like, right, this just isn't the kind of dynamic I want. Further to that, I also had a period of doing friends with benefits, which had its place, but I gotta be honest, it was one of those things where, that was stopping me from really healing. And this, I think, is a really good opportunity to really segue into where I see sex positivity being problematic for our community. And really just to say that it's important to understand that you've got to do this if it feels genuine and right to you, not out of a place to avoid things that are important to you. So what I see typically when it comes to sex positivity in our community is that it's used to avoid relevant issues that people are facing. For example, when I had just been freshly broken up, I was devastated. I was also extremely heartbroken, and in an attempt to try and make myself feel and look better, and also to try and get back on track really quickly without addressing my own pain, I went straight in to having friends with benefits because I wanted to feel on top of myself and I wanted to feel control. When in fact, I did not feel control at all. I felt completely shattered. I felt completely broken by what had happened. And rather than admitting that I was in trouble, I tried to convey strength and also a sense of superiority by being with other people. And I've got to be honest, it was really quite shaming to even be with other people off the back of that experience. Every time I'd be with a new guy, I kept reflecting back to the person I loved. Quite literally, I would finish having an extremely good time with one of the guys that I was seeing and just be hit with a massive overwhelm of shame, grief, depression, and it was like I was reliving the same experience post-breakup again, and it was a terrible feeling. And I realized that the only way for me to heal was to stop distracting myself with other guys and address the fact that not only was I choosing to be with partners who physically looked like my ex, which was a problematic thing, but also I had to realize that I was just holding myself captive to this experience by constantly letting it play out, and I needed to sit with that pain and address it because that was the only way for me to heal. And that was a tough lesson to learn because I wanted to feel like, as I said, I was in control, I was fine, I was all good, but really I was running away from my own pain, and it was a time to address the loneliness I felt rather than seeking it out and replaying the same trauma. And that's not the only experience that I've observed outside of my own experiences. For example, I've also seen situations where there are two people together in what's seemingly a monogamous relationship, where one guy is feeling insecure in the relationship and in an attempt to try and please his more avoidant, emotionally unavailable partner, suggests, hey, I've got an idea, why don't we create an open relationship? Because I think that will help us out, romantically. It's important to understand that when you're dating someone who has a pattern of avoidancy or an emotional unavailable characteristics, typically they go cold when you've gotten into a relationship because they fear commitment. So when you're giving them an out through an open relationship, you're pretty much signing the end of a relationship right there because you're playing into the fear of like, oh, well, I want to try and control this and preempt this, but really what you're creating is self-sabotage. And that's an easy trap that a lot of men fall into in an attempt to try and hold a relationship together and control their partner. And that's not the only experience that I've observed outside of my own experiences. For example, I've also seen situations where there are two people together in what's seemingly a monogamous relationship, where one guy is feeling insecure in the relationship and in an attempt to try and please his more avoidant, emotionally unavailable partner, suggests, hey, I've got an idea, why don't we create an open relationship? Because I think that will help us out, romantically. It's important to understand that when you're dating someone who has a pattern of avoidancy or an emotional unavailable characteristics, typically they go cold when you've gotten into a relationship because they fear commitment. So when you're giving them an out through an open relationship, you're pretty much signing the end of a relationship right there because you're playing into the fear of like, oh, well, I want to try and control this and preempt this, but really what you're creating is self-sabotage. And that's an easy trap that a lot of men fall into in an attempt to try and hold a relationship together and control their partner. In addition to this kind of example, there are also situations where a couple who maybe are going through a few insecurities decide to open up the relationship, and what that does is it distracts from the real issues. It can become a situation where instead of addressing the fact that they're having real intimate challenges because of past childhood trauma, they think that by opening up the relationship, it'll bring back a bit of zest and spice to the relationship that they're having. And what this can do is it can just create further insecurities and anxiety within the existing unit rather than actually being a place to explore what's actually going on. And so really what can happen is that when this couple starts introducing new people into the relationship, it's sort of like a temporary high followed by a bit of a lull where they're just like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And it really brings them back to the same old issue which got them there in the first place, which is what are we running away from? And that might be an issue they both need to explore. Another thing to consider too is the fact that for many people, what they do is they create an open relationship rather than actually addressing the status of their relationship. So in other words, when a couple is getting frustrated with the ins and outs of their experiences, what they might do is start to change the status of the relationship and say, oh, look, we're not official. We're actually going to be an open relationship, instead of actually having conversations addressing the fact that they feel like breaking up or they don't feel like this particular relationship is working out for them. And having that conversation would be far healthier than dragging this out and making things worse by turning it into whatever new kind of experience they want to do as a way of avoiding having that very important conversation. This is an example where avoidancy is taking precedence over the health of the relationship, and it's being called sex positivity when it's not. Finally, I also think it's really important to stress how sometimes spirituality and spiritual lingo can often be thrown in to sex positivity as a way to talk about how free and liberating and how egoless we are by expanding ourselves and offering love to everyone rather than just one other person. This kind of language can be incredibly dangerous when considering the fact you may actually be hurting others' feelings and just calling this, an opportunity to expand your love or to just give love to more than one person. What it really shows is a lack of responsibility, as well as a lack of emotional awareness of the damage you could be doing to people as part of this unit. Because if you're excusing your behavior and saying that, oh, by allowing myself not to be with one person exclusively, that I can be with anyone, then essentially what you're saying is, I don't have to hold myself responsible for the consequences of being part of this particular union with one or more other people as well. And I think that kind of language is incredibly dangerous in this kind of context. This kind of behavior is really in the providence of narcissism, and I'm not talking just specifically NPD. I'm talking when people have a very self-entitled attitude to the kind of behavior that they have without wanting to take ownership for how it's impacting others, saying things like, oh, well, it's okay because part of the gay community is about sex positivity and we can just do whatever we want, without really taking into regard the actions and consequences of those actions on other people's emotional well-being as well, or even physically, mentally. It's when you really aren't in touch with how your need for, whether it be validation, for sexual approval, is coming at a cost to other people's lives. And I think it's really important to be aware too, that just because we are a community that can explore sex positivity doesn't give us the right to hurt other people in the process. For some, being more promiscuous is totally okay, but it's also about being mindful of how our actions are impacting other people as well. To wrap up, I think it's important to understand that how we choose to have sex and also how we choose to physically interact with everyone is a personal choice. I think that the opportunity to chemically and physically bond with others is a magical experience. It's also important to realize that this drug-like effect can also have significant consequences for us if we're avoiding a lot of issues that need to be addressed. That's why I think in an effort to try and bond and connect with people, it's important to also understand how our actions in the bed can also have a significant consequence to our mental and emotional well-being. And if it's something that's in service of us, more power to us. But if it's something that's forcing us to actually ignore a lot of relevant things that need to come out, that's when it needs to be addressed. In any case, I hope that this video shed a bit of light into my thoughts and feelings about sex positivity. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings about it because I feel like this is a very opinionated topic and worth exploring with you guys as well too. Anyways, if you enjoyed this, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.